Hello, chess fans. Welcome to another edition of Chess Chat, a program brought to you live from the Workers' Credit Union studios at Fitchburg Access Television. I am your host, George Merijanian, Program Director of the Wachusett Chess Club at Fitchburg State University, the second oldest chess club in Massachusetts. And this club had been meeting every Wednesday evening at the McKay complex at the university, but we have been in suspension since March 2020 because of the pandemic. But we hope to return within a couple of months to the university and resume over-the-board activity again. And we'll keep you posted when we do that. You'll be the first ones to be informed of that move back to the university and our playing again at Fitchburg State. Now with me once again at the Fitchburg Access Television Production Center is our award-winning director who's working in the control room. He's from Fitchburg, and he's assisted in the control room by fellow resident and longtime Wachusett Chess Club member Brian Bigelow. And across from me, sitting across from me, is my colleague, a well-known very active chess player, tournament player. In fact, he's off to a tournament actually in Maine next month. Very strong tournament he's playing in. But he's an author. He's written a chess book. He's also my trusty co-host.
Trusty co-host.
Dave Kuchar, Westminster. Hello, Dave.
Hi, George.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Well, Dave, today's program is a program that we had planned to do about a month or two ago.
Yeah, back in March.
Back in March. This program is going to be a dedication, or actually a celebration, of a very famous World Championship match that was held 100 years ago, 1921. What was this World Championship match that was held 100 years ago?
So it was the world champion was Lasker.
Emmanuel Lasker.
The longest reigning world champion. So
Right.
he had been world champion for like 27 years, I think.
Close to 27 years. Emmanuel
at that
Lasker.
point. So he's the longest
Right.
to hold the title.
Right.
And he was playing against Jose Capablanca from
From
Cuba.
From Cuba.
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, you mentioned Capablanca. Our Darren Dame, our director, actually has a photo of a very young Jose Raul Capablanca that was taken when Jose was 4 years old. Here it is. There's little Jose. Maybe his parents call him Pepe. I don't know what I'm sure our Spanish-speaking viewers might know what the nickname is for Jose. In many Spanish-speaking countries, it's Pepe. But Jose is there sitting. He's 4 years old. He's playing his father, who's also Jose Maria Capablanca.
Okay.
His father was an army officer in the Spanish, in the Cuban, or actually it was the Spanish army, an officer. But he taught his son chess.
Well, I read that they think he picked it up just by watching.
Yeah, absolutely, you're right. Jose actually learned the game of chess at the age of 4 just by watching his father play other people.
Yeah.
And he played other military people as well as family members or relatives. And this kid actually, he was phenomenal. He understood how to play this game just by watching his father play.
Yeah.
So his father really did not teach him. He just observed by watching. But Jose was born in Havana, Cuba. It was at November of 1888. Yeah,
Okay.
88. And after he actually, now you told me that he actually passed the examinations to go to Columbia University. Did he go to?
He did to Columbia for I think a semester.
A semester. He only went for a semester. He was going to study chemical engineering. Okay, and he dropped out.
I think he was playing more chess than
Yes, I think
doing school.
There was actually an excuse given that his financial funding was withdrawn, but I think the real reason is actually the chess bug bit.
Yeah.
And he really wanted to play more chess,
Yeah.
and that's what he did. Okay, so he did a lot of playing in terms. Now here is an older Jose Capablanca, who really was one of the. He actually became the second official world champion when.
Well, third, right?
I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry, the third, because we're going to show the player he played. He became the third official world champion. Okay. let's have a photo of actually the person he played. They're both together. I believe I have a photo. Darren has a photo of Capablanca on the left.
Yep.
And on the right is Emanuel Lasker, who was born in Germany, was born actually in December 1868, in a place called Berlingen, which was in Prussia. It was part of it was a kingdom of Prussia, which is part of Germany.
Today.
After World War II, his birthplace was transferred to Poland.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Poland. It is now in northwestern Poland,
Okay.
called Barlinek. But anyways, Emanuel Lasker was born in Germany, studied in Berlin, spent many years in Germany, and then moved to London for a time, and then eventually came to the United States. He settled in the United States, and he was a very active there. And he became the second official world champion because he defeated Wilhelm Steinitz, a very famous player who actually said, you know, when I play, this is going to be the first. This is going to be an official world championship match. There was no world chess governing body
Right.
back, you know, well over 100 years ago.
Right.
So Steinitz was the first official world champion.
Yeah.
That match, they played 2 matches. Lasker and Steinitz played 2 matches.
Okay.
The first match was played in New York, Philadelphia, and Montreal. Lasker won the first match. Then they played a second match. The first match was in 1894. The second match was in 1896, and Lasker won that, and that was played in Moscow. That was the return match in 1896. Yeah.
Okay.
So, anyways, so do we have another photo of Capablanca or Lasker? There is one more photo we're going to show, and I believe it's the photo from the match itself in Havana, Cuba.
I believe it is. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not positive, but
That match was played in March, April of 1921.
right.
And how many games were they supposed to contest?
So the rule was the first one to win 8 games,
Yes.
but it was going to be a maximum of 24 total. So if neither had won 8, whoever was ahead after 24 would have been the
Okay.
world
And draws
champion.
do not count.
Draws do
If
not
any
count,
games were
right,
drawn, they do
right.
not count. All right. So, okay. Now you have actually some very interesting notes
Yeah.
about before this match
How this
took
came
place.
to be, right.
What happened? You said something happened in 1911.
Well, so it starts in 1911.
Yeah. What happened in
There was
1911?
a famous international tournament in San Sebastian, Spain.
Okay.
It was the 15 strongest players in the world,
Yeah.
other than Lasker.
Yes.
And I know that at least one of the players thought that Capablanca shouldn't even be invited because he hadn't proven himself internationally yet.
Okay.
But they had the tournament, and Capablanca won.
All right.
So at that point, he felt justified in challenging Lasker to a championship match.
So he did that in 1911.
In 1911, he challenged Lasker.
Right.
Lasker
What did
came
Lasker do?
back with a list of 17 stipulations,
Yes.
but one of them was that if they had the match, Capablanca had to win by at least 2 games,
Ooh.
which
Is that
Capablanca
fair?
said, no, this isn't fair. You've never
Right.
required this of your previous challengers. It's ridiculous. And so he refused to play under those terms.
Okay.
So then what happened is 1914, 3 years later,
Yeah. What happened in 1914?
Akiba Rubinstein and Lasker were going to play.
Yes.
And then World War I happened.
Okay. That interrupted.
So the championship match never happened between those two.
Right.
So that lasted 4 years.
Right.
So finally, in 1920,
Yes.
the war was over, had been over for a couple of years. Lasker and Capablanca agreed to play to a match in 1921.
Right.
But back then, like you said, there's no official world body,
Yes.
so
Who sets the rules?
so
Who sets the regulation?
money had to be raised
Yep.
for a prize fund, and it wasn't happening. No one was coming forth with money for a prize fund. So Lasker actually said, "Look, there doesn't seem to be interest. I'm just going to resign my title, and you, Capablanca, are the new champion." But right at that time, when he said that, money had been raised in Havana.
And Lasker didn't know about this.
Lasker didn't know about it, so it said, so Lasker resigned the title in favor of Capablanca. He was unaware that enthusiasts in Havana had just raised $20,000, which
Wow.
in today's money is $270,000.
Wow.
So Capablanca heard that Lasker was just resigning the title, so he took a boat all the way to the Netherlands to meet with Lasker and say,
Oh,
look,
really?
there's money. We've got the money.
So he made a special trip to the Netherlands?
Special trip all the way to the
let
Netherlands.
Alaska know
by
that money
boat,
had been raised?
to say, we've got the money, let's play it in Havana. And Lasker finally agreed and said, okay, we'll play the match in Havana.
And Lasker agreed to play the match in Havana?
Right, yep.
Okay.
Because I think that was a stipulation. The people who raised
Who raised the money,
were
they were
in
entitled
Havana.
to have the
they
match
said,
played.
we want it to be here.
Right.
And Lasker said, sure.
Okay, right. Okay, so he agreed to do
Which
that?
may have been his undoing because Havana was hot
Oh,
and
yes,
humid.
this is actually when the match was held.
Yeah.
The match, I think it was actually in the months of March and
March and
April. But
April.
it was warm. It started to get warm. It started to get, sultry.
Right.
So I think, did the weather have an impact on Lasker's play?
He ended up, so it ended up after 14 games,
Yeah.
Capablanca had won 4,
All right.
and Lasker hadn't won at all, and he dropped out. He just said,
Yeah. You're the champ. He just said.
yeah,
Yeah.
the heat and humidity was too much for him and was affecting him, and so
Okay.
he just resigned at that point.
Okay.
So after 14 games.
So that was in April of 1921.
Yeah.
How long? I think we mentioned. How long was Lasker?
I think it was 27 years.
I think it was close to 27 years, longer than anybody.
Right.
And I say no one will ever break that record. You
Probably
see anybody
not,
breaking a record?
because now there's a world body that organizes it. Back then, he could choose who he played, right?
Right.
So
Yeah,
he
right.
didn't always pick, necessarily the strongest.
Yes, back then the champion decided the terms of
The challenger had to raise the money. And
yeah, it's different now.
It's very different
The World
now.
Chess Federation sets the regulations.
And it has to happen
rules.
every 2 years now. And
Right. Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, we have picked actually for our viewers one of the games from this match.
Yep.
I think it's the 9th game.
I think it's the 9th game. So at this point, Capablanca had won 1 game.
Right. And Lasker, no games.
The rest, right, and the rest had been draws at this point.
Okay. Capablanca had white in this
Yep.
game. So how did he open up this 9th game?
He opened with D4.
Okay. A very good opening. We've seen this
Yep, numerous times.
numerous times. Absolutely.
Yep.
Now, to which Lasker responded with pawn to D5.
Yep.
A very good reply.
Yeah.
Very, very popular. It's not the only move, but it's certainly a sensible reply to D4.
Sure.
So now what does Capablanca do on his second move?
Second move, he develops his knight to F3.
Okay, developing a piece, very important to do. Now, Lasker could have done the same thing with his knight on G8 and brought it to F6, but he chose not to do that. Instead, he played the pawn on E7 to E6.
Yep.
So, which, by the way, shuts in this light squared bishop on C8. Okay,
Right.
but it does open up the diagonal for the dark squared bishop on F8.
Right.
So that was his second move. So how does Capablanca continue with his third move?
So he plays C4,
Okay.
which in queen pawn openings you see a lot. First the pawn goes to C4, then the knight comes out.
Okay. Now, do we have an opening here? Do we actually have a name of an opening yet, or is it too early? I mean, isn't he offering this pawn? Isn't this actually a gambit? I mean,
Sure, I guess it's sort of a queen's gambit.
Yeah, it's a gambit. Actually, I would be considered a gambit, a queen's gambit, because actually black has the opportunity, if black wants to, is to take that pawn on C4 right now.
Right.
But what Lasker does, what does he do? Doesn't he actually play C5?
C5.
Okay. Now, what is this? He could have actually played knight F6, or he could have played
Lots of choices,
the pawn to C6, but he chose C5. Now, do we have a variation?
Now I think it's called the Tarrasch.
Yes. This is known as the Tarrasch defense or Tarrasch variation of the queen's gambit. Decline, because black declined the pawn on, on C4. And this was named after a very well-known German player, Dr. Siegbert Tarrasch. Chess Chat, we did a program on Dr. Tarrasch years ago, a very famous player from over 100 years ago.
Yeah.
All right, so what did Capablanca do next?
C takes D5.
So he's exchanging here.
Exchanging.
C takes D5. And of course now, what Lasker does in response to that, he plays the pawn on E6 and takes on D5. He could have taken he could not take with the queen because he'd come under attack with the knight to C3. But this solves his problem bishop.
Right, exactly.
Now by taking back with the E pawn to D5, this bishop on C8 now is free to come out.
Right.
Okay, what is Capablanca doing now?
Develops his other knight to c3.
Okay, that was his fifth move.
Yep.
And Lasker just follows suit with developing one of his knights. He could have actually played knight f6, but he plays knight c6. So that's his move. All right. Capablanca's move, what does he do now?
So he plays g3.
Aha.
He's going to fianchetto his bishop out this way.
Okay. Now, we may have some viewers who have never heard the term fianchetto. How would you define a fianchetto to somebody who's brand new to chess, who's never heard the term fianchetto?
It's when you develop one of your bishops one square in front of the either the castled king or
and place it on the long diagonal.
Place on the long diagonal.
So fianchetto is actually a placement of a bishop, either bishop on a long diagonal. The long diagonal. Okay.
Yep.
So that's what he did. He played g3 to prepare to fianchetto the light squared bishop on f1. Okay. So in response to that, Lasker now brings out his knight and develops it to f6. Knight f6.
Yep.
So both players have actually developed both knights.
Both knights, yeah.
Yeah. And it's now Capablanca's move. What does he do?
Plays bishop to g2.
Carries it out.
Preparing the castle.
Okay.
Putting that bishop on the long diagonal, like you said. Yeah.
And he's preparing the castle. Now, what Lasker does, he brings this bishop on c8 and brings it to e6, adding further defense to this pawn on d5.
Yeah.
But it's adequately defended as it is by the queen. And of course, it's blocked by the pawn on d4. Anyways.
Just no tactics so far,
No
really.
tactics. This is developing pieces.
Right.
This is the opening. Where developing the pieces is the most important thing.
Right.
And Capablanca now castles.
On his eighth move.
Eighth move. Okay. To which Lasker plays bishop to e7. It looks like he's getting ready to castle by playing the bishop to e7. Okay. So both players are keeping pace with development. They have actually three minor pieces. Well, actually, Lasker actually has four minor pieces developed, but Capablanca's castled with three minor pieces developed. All right, so it's now Capablanca's move. His ninth move, is it?
Yeah, now this is kind of interesting. He plays d takes c5. He could have done this earlier,
but he held off.
But he held off.
Why did he hold off?
He held off until Lasker had moved his bishop.
Yes.
Now he's forcing him to move it a second time.
Now he's going to move to regain the pawn. He's got to move the bishop again.
He's got a ways to move. Right?
So that's why Capablanca did not take the pawn immediately. He waited until he saw that bishop on e7.
Right.
So bishop takes c5 is Lasker's move.
Yeah.
Okay. What does Capablanca do now? It's his
bishop g5. So he's developing his last minor piece, and he's pinning
the knight.
That knight.
Okay. So bishop g5. All right. Now, what Black could have done is castle. Castle was a possibility.
Yep.
But here is what Lasker played.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He plays the pawn on d5, the d4, which attacks the knight.
Yes.
Now, you told me that you have notes that actually Capablanca commented on this game.
Right, had written some notes, and
what did he say
his
about
note was, I had never seen this variation before, and I therefore thought for a long time in order to make up my mind as to whether I should play bishop takes f6 or knight to e4.
Those are the two choices.
The two things he was looking at. He says, I finally decided upon the latter move as the safest course. So he plays knight to e4. He thought this was safer.
What's the threat? By playing the knight to e4, what is now Capablanca threatening?
He's threatening the bishop on c5.
Which is undefeated. Yeah, so he's threatening to win that bishop.
And we can say, where he says this is the safest course, he's probably happy with the draw because he's ahead in the match by one.
He's got that one single win.
Every draw brings him closer to winning the match. So
so if he were to draw the remaining games, he'd win the match.
So he's happy with draws.
But look at this. Not only does knight attack the undefended bishop, but actually have a double attack on the knight on f6. So Lasker's next move is forced. He cannot allow this knight to be taken.
Yep.
So the bishop now comes back to e7. That was a forced move to stop actually having his king side
destroyed,
and pawns doubled. All right, so what does Capablanca do in response to this?
So he starts trading off. He plays knight takes f6, check.
Check, okay, to which Lasker on his 12th move, is it?
Yeah.
Bishop takes f6, that's what he does.
Yeah.
Bishop takes f6, okay. They both exchange knights. Okay, now how does Capablanca continue? It
He
says,
plays bishop takes f6.
okay, bishop takes f6, to which Lasker plays queen takes f6.
Yeah.
So let's look at this position. Let's our viewers look at this position. As you look at this position, does anybody have an advantage here? Or what is does somebody have a liability? Is there actually something that black should be concerned about?
Yeah, so black has this isolated queen pawn,
Aha.
and it's considered to be if you get to an end game, it's considered to be a liability. So,
So you don't want to get to an end game with a
Right.
single isolated pawn. I mean,
Right,
a
so you don't-
isolated pawn.
So Capablanca, white, wants to be trading pieces. Lasker, black, does not want to be trading pieces.
Okay.
And actually, Capablanca commented,
There's a comment
he
on
said, it's my view that this position is not good for black.
Because of the isolated pawn.
I think, he doesn't say, but I think that's part of it.
Okay.
He says, though perhaps there may be no way to force a win. So he feels like he's got a good position, maybe not good enough to win.
All right. So it's Capablanca's move now. So what does he
Capablanca
do in
moves,
response?
So he plays, I think it's a nice move, queen to a4.
Okay.
So now he's cleared the way for his rooks. He's connected the rooks.
And vacated that square D1 for a rook.
Right, to
land
add
on it.
possibly another attacker to this. So now
And,
he's
and it pins this
pins
knight.
the knight momentarily.
Okay. A good move.
Yep.
A very good, solid move.
Yeah.
Okay. At this point, Lasker castles.
Yep.
Okay. So he gets out of the pin.
So yeah,
The knight is no longer pinned.
finishes
by
his development.
Okay. Now, what does Capablanca do now? It's actually
Blanca
his.
plays an interesting move, queen to b5.
Now, what's the threat?
And he notes that it's threatening not only the b pawn,
Yes.
but he's threatening queen to g5 to trade queens. And
So he has-
again, black doesn't want to be trading
So he has
pieces.
two threats.
Two threats.
One threat is to win a pawn on b7, but the other threat is the bringing the queen to g5 would force the queens off the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the queen could not avoid being exchanged. So how does Lasker respond to queen b5? He has to protect his pawn,
Yep.
and he does it by bringing this rook on a8 to
Right.
b8.
'Cause
All right, so the
he
rook-
can't push the pawn, otherwise he'd
no,
drop the knight.
that's right. That pawn on b7 is protecting the knight on c6. So he brings the rook over a to b8 and protects the pawn on b7. All right. So now what does Capablanca do now?
Well, so the interesting thing here
Yes.
is that in spite of what he said in his note, he does not play queen to g5.
He could have done it,
He could have done it, and
which would have forced the exchange of queens.
I think it would have, yeah. And so it's not certain why he didn't.
Yeah, he
Especially
actually,
when he commented that it was a threat.
right.
So instead he plays rook f to d1.
Putting pressure on the
So
pawn.
he's adding a third attacker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now Lasker must realize, okay, maybe Capablanca wants to carry out the plan of exchanging queens
Right.
by bringing the queen over to
Right.
g5. So that's why he plays h6, which stops that. h6 is the good move, which prevents
Yep.
the queen from moving to g5 and forcing the exchange of queens. All right, so now it's Capablanca's next move. What does he do?
Knight back to e1.
On his 17th move, he plays the knight back. Wow,
Right.
okay.
So now there's two pieces attacking. The bishop and the queen are attacking this knight,
Aha, that's right. We have a
threatening to win a pawn.
right. So it is a threat of winning a pawn. So here is what Lasker does after the knight goes back to e1. He brings this rook on f8 to e8. He puts himself on a semi-open file. It's not a completely open file.
Yeah.
There's a pawn on e2, but that's it's defended by the queen.
Yep.
True, the
Yep.
queen is here protecting that. But the rooks belong on open files or semi-open files.
Yep.
The rook had no future staying on f8.
Yep.
Okay, so the rook f8, fe8 is what the Lasker played. All right, so what does...
Now Capablanca has a comment on his
oh, he has a comment here?
move. He says he could have played bishop takes c6, winning this pawn,
That's right, he could have won the
but
pawn.
then this rook
Would take
would
this
come
pawn.
down, and he said that would have just led to a draw.
Oh, so he didn't like that.
So he was thinking,
Okay.
maybe he's thinking he still might have a win here. So he played rook to d2.
Okay, rook d2, that's his, 18th move?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, now here is where Lasker now plays the bishop on e6 to g4.
Yep.
The bishop and the rook now are attacking the pawn on e2, but of course
It's
the
guarded
rook and the
twice.
queen are,
Yep.
are defended twice. So it's adequately defended. Okay. So what does Capablanca do now? Rook's
Rook
c1,
to C1.
move 19. He
So-
puts the rook on an open file.
Open file.
Yep.
He's adding another attacker to this. He's threatening perhaps to bring the rook up here.
Oh yes. Okay. That's a good. Looks like a good move. So after rook c1, what Lasker does is play rook to e5 and attack the queen on b5.
Right.
Okay. All right. So how does Capablanca respond to this attack on his queen?
Well, one thing he could have done, and it's been pointed out that Lasker was probably hoping
Yeah.
that Capablanca would do something like this, and it gets very complicated, but this would have ended up being bad.
Yeah. Okay.
So he thought
he
maybe-
rejected that.
So he ended up rejecting that, instead pulls the queen back to d3.
Okay.
And
Last-
he said, oh, he did say,
Yes.
oh, actually Capablanca did in his notes say that if he had played this,
Oh, the queen
Lasker would have played queen to g5
attacking the rook,
with a
rook
win,
on
he said with a winning game. So so that's
So that's why he
so
rejected.
that's why he rejected that and played queen
Okay.
d3.
Queen d3. Okay. Here is where Lasker plays rook b8 to e8. Rook b8. Double. Now he has double the rooks on the e file. He's attacking this pawn actually
3 times.
3 times, and it's only defended twice,
Yep.
as I see it. Okay. All right. So what does Capablanca do now?
Plays bishop f3, adding
Okay.
a defender, and
Defender.
also challenging that
Challenging
bishop.
that. So bishop f3, and here is where Lasker could have actually played the pawn up
Yes.
h5, protecting that pawn
So Capablanca's
a
comment
note?
was
What is
black could have tried to keep up the attack
with h5.
by playing h5.
Okay.
And he says the text move that he played, bishop takes,
Yes.
simplifies matters and easily leads to a draw.
Okay, so,
So
bishop takes f3 is what Lasker played, and to which actually Capablanca now.
right, and there's some accounts say that the game was actually agreed drawn here,
Oh, okay.
but we have additional moves. It's not clear as to
Right, it's not confirmed whether actually
These were actually played or not.
The game ended with an agreed to a draw
Here,
or
or
did it continue
did it continue. So-
after knight takes f3,
so
which is
knight
move
takes
22.
F3, yeah.
Okay, so now we actually have rook moving to e4, protecting that pawn again.
Yeah.
Okay, well, how do we continue here as we move along here?
Capablanca played rook c4,
Rook c4.
attacking,
Yeah,
adding
attacking
another
the
attacker,
pawn on,
yeah.
on D. Okay, yeah. But
Yeah.
now we have this queen on f6 moving to e6, and we have the 2 rooks and the queen bearing down
Yeah.
on the pawn 3 times.
Right.
It's only defended twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, only defended. So what does Capablanca do now?
But now he plays knight takes d4,
Okay, and attacks the queen.
attacks the queen.
And Lasker takes the knight, knight takes d4, and this is where we have actually, according to our sources, the
Right.
game was drawn.
drawn
Okay.
because everything is going to be exchanged here on d4,
Right.
and it's
Yeah.
2 against 2 here. I think he'll end up dropping this pawn, so it'll be 3 against 3 here.
Yeah. So it'd be symmetrical.
Dead drawn.
Dead
Yep.
drawn. Okay. So right now, you had something you want. Okay. Right now, I wanted to talk about there's a tournament. I hope actually our chess champ fans take note of what's happening this Sunday on Father's Day,
Yep.
even though it's Father's Day. June 20th, there's a great fun tournament at the Simon Park. If you go to the Simon Park website, Friends of Simon Park, their Facebook.
SAIMA, right?
SAIMA, Simon Park, and you'll find the details. They're celebrating their summer festival, Kesayula, chess tournament at Simon Park. So we hope our Chess Chat fans enjoyed the game that Dave and I presented to you. We'll see you next time on the next edition of Chess Chat. We hope to see some of you at Simon Park on Sunday, June 20th, for the summer festival, Kesayula, at Simon Park in Fitchburg. See you there.